9 a.m. meeting of the Public Safety Committee. And so I do apologize to all of you, whether you are here from the public sector or the private sector. My name is Jack Weiss. I'm joined by my colleagues Dennis Zine and Bernard Parks. On proposals for consent items, colleagues, are item 5 from the Personnel Department, item 6, Santa Clarita Community College, item 7, van donation, item 8, grant award, item 9, traffic safety issue, and item 10, which is a urban search and rescue matter. Oh, and 11 can also go on consent with the instruction that the city attorney needs to have the ordinance ready by the time the item goes to council. So those are the proposals for consent items, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Out of those, Mr. Parks or Mr. Zine, are there any that you wish to hear?
Let me just check.
I have on 9 a couple questions, and on 11 a couple questions.
Okay. And by couple, do you mean that we should just hold them and get to them after? Because we're going to have a lengthy, probably a lengthy discussion of other items, Mr. Zine. Is it just something that can be resolved offline, or do you want it actually held special? Whatever you want.
Well, it's regarding the fees, the additional fees that they're going to charge. It seems that they're going up a considerable amount of money. 121 to 450. Seems a tremendous increase.
Okay, so I just want to know if you want me to call it special and have it and hear it after we do these other items, or if there's something you want your staff. Maybe you could have your staff go ask them while we're in the meantime.
My concern is on the fees, and then on number 9, I wanted to know if that's citywide or if that's going to be only certain areas on the seatbelt grants.
All right, well, we'll hold those items.
Yeah.
Mr. Parks?
Yeah, on 9 and 10.
Do you want those called special?
Yes.
All right, we'll call 9, 10, and 11 special. The other items we'll approve on consent.
Okay.
Mr. Parks, Mr. Zine, if there's something easy on 9, 10, or 11 that you want to direct your staff to ask the city staff who are here about, feel free to do that. Otherwise, we'll hear them after we hear the other items.
Well, I can do the one real quick, the ticket situation. I just want to know if it's citywide or
Which item is that?
number 9.
Number 9. Well, did you want number 9 as well, Mr.
Yes.
Parks?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you both want it, then we'll hold on to it. All right. DNA, please, Mr. White.
Good morning, John White, City Clerk. Item number 1, Police Department to present verbal report relative to the status of DNA testing, backlog, and cold hits, and other DNA-related matters.
Morning, Chief.
Good morning. We'll begin our report as we usually do with Yvette Sanchez-Owens and her update.
Good morning.
Names, please.
We have Yvette Sanchez-Owens, LAPD SID.
Thank you.
We have a total of 7,006 cases in our backlog, and that's comprised of 206 cases that have been requested for analysis, rape kits, that have not yet been completed, and then 296 other cases that have been requested but not yet completed. So that leaves a total of 6,504 cases that are still in property that have not been requested for analysis. That's 112 fewer than last week. So that again shows our progress in contracting out and using some of the contracting money that's been given to us. So far this year, we've had 833 cases booked into property, rape kits. That's 26 higher than last week. We've had 600 cases, rape kits requested for analysis so far this year. So far, 498 of those have been screened. 291 have been outsourced. 152 are in screening right now, and 147 are in profiling right now. We have a total of 902 case to offender notifications so far this year.
Good morning, council members. David DiLiberto with Robbery Homicide Division. Last week we had 5 DNA hits, which were compared to 7 for the same timeframe in 2007, which brings us to a total of 234 for the year, which is a 20% decrease compared to last year. We've had a 15% decrease in homicide hits, 9% decrease in sexual assault hits, and 36% decrease in other hits. Of the 234 CODIS hits that we've had this year, our HD personnel are handling 86 or 37% of them.
Chief.
Council members, Charlie Beck, Chief of Detectives, Los Angeles Police Department. We've continued our efforts to get through the property division cold storage. Detectives in there, about 20 detectives in there today. We think we will be done this week. We think we will be done with the first stages of the inventory, and then we will be creating the database and entering the information from this stage of the inventory into that database so we can sort it, so we can have a better discussion about what is actually in there. There's almost 80,000 items that the 80,000 items that the crew has gone through. These are not all, obviously, sexual assault kits. They include many other items from a wide variety of crimes. But we will have a final tally and some finite numbers that we can deal with. We've gotten great cooperation from the council office. I think Susan's going to come by and help us do some work today. So I appreciate that. And we're very satisfied with the results. When we started this, I wasn't sure if it was going to take a month or 2 months, but it looks like it's going to end up taking about 2 weeks. So which is great.
It's really impressive. I mean, you did 8,000 the first weekend, I guess, and you've been at it ever since. At it ever since. We let them take the weekend off, but they worked late Friday and back at it this morning. So I encourage anybody that has an extra minute to stop by and let them know that you appreciate it. It's really not what a lot of them signed up to do. It's cold, it's dreary, it's tedious. It's like council office sometimes. So, no, and I would encourage my colleagues to go not just to visit the freezer, but to visit the individuals who are counting the items of evidence from the storage freezers, because it is laborious and tedious, and it's very important, and we should be grateful to them. Thank you for doing that. Anything else that you want us to know about?
A couple other things. Yvette and I went to a meeting at the lab this past week with the county representatives and state representatives that formed a DNA task force that is looking at some of the more global issues that everybody's dealing with. As you know, the sheriff has claimed his backlog, so to speak, and is now counting backlog the same way that we do. So they're facing and has pledged that he will test all kits also, as Chief Bratton did. So both organizations are trying to deal with this together. There's a number of things we'll be looking at as far as storage and testing and outsourcing that we'll try to get best practices developed for. Hopefully the city task force will be able to lead the way on that. So we're really encouraged about that. We had a really good discussion with state DOJ, who's been very helpful on this and is also willing to help us with our fingerprint issues. One of the things that we're going to be looking for in the very near, you hear about the cold hits all the time, and cold hits are great, but many times they're hits on people that are not in the database. So this, one of the things that we're going to be looking at, working with the district attorney on, is the issuance of John Doe warrants for those individuals based on their DNA hits. This is something that's not been done yet, and it's something that we're very desirous of having occur. It tolls the statute. It enters somebody into the system. It sets up a situation where, especially starting next year when all felonies are DNA tested, it sets up an ability to take somebody immediately into custody once their DNA comes back. So, a bunch of things that we're working on.
Thank you. Colleagues, you have questions for Deputy Chief Beck or for... Thank you all very much for coming. Thank you so much for the leadership and focus you're bringing to these issues.
Well, thank the committee for the leadership. That's what has enabled us to get. I should have mentioned that we took $250,000 in from you last week to work on the backlog, and I want to thank you for that. And I want to thank this committee for their emphasis, because otherwise we wouldn't have been able to get this done.
Thank you, Chief. Thanks, folks. Okay, we'll hear from them again. Mr. White, next item, please.
Item 2, Verbal presentations and discussion regarding mass notification systems available to the City of Los Angeles, and you have speaker cards on your desk.
Thank you. Colleagues, here is the purpose of putting this item before you. I'm thinking it's literally a year and a half ago, Mr. Parks, you probably have a better memory than I, because there's nothing you ever forget, I've noticed, when the San Diego fires occurred, and we all learned of this technology or this system that was referred to as reverse 911, and every time I say that, there's some city bureaucrat who jumps up and down and says, oh, you can't use that terminology because it's copyrighted. But in any event, there was a good deal of media attention to, I don't know if it was fact or allegation, that a reverse notification system in the San Diego area enabled many people to evacuate more quickly from those fires. And when that happened, Mr. Parks, Mr. LaBonge, and I both started asking city departments, hey, where are we in terms of getting a similar or better system online? Mr. Parks, I swear that was a year and a half ago. Mr. Zine, that is probably 4 or 5 Sirius Valley fires ago. It's a Metrolink disaster ago. We're heading into another horrific fire season, and the city still doesn't have one of these systems. And I know there have been efforts over time to sort of jerry-rig something, but I mean, I literally saw with my own eyes, coincidentally, the evacuation from the North Santa Fe Valley 2 weeks ago, because I happened to be there early that morning, and it just seems crazy that we're, you know, the technology exists to tackle these issues, to notify people, cell phones, pagers, computers, home phones, city workers over a rapid area in real time without requiring the city to maintain elaborate telephonic systems and, you know, old rotary phones and all this sort of stuff. And the city still hasn't done it. Now, there have been some efforts, and a lot of that is due to Mr. Parks's prodding over the past year and a half. I know Mr. Parks has been very involved, and yet I think he probably still shares the same frustration that I do, that the city hasn't come up with one of these yet. So what I asked Ms. Stengel to set up today was do 2 things. First, we invited, you know, come one, come all. If you are one of these vendors who makes one of these gadgets, come in and show us how it works. And that's why we got the flat screen up there, and I'm told that the computer is all hooked up and ready to go. So first we're going to let everyone show off what they can do, and then we're going to have the city staff come forward and explain where they are in the process. And I'd like to hear that we're going to get one of these systems up and running before the next fire. Ms. Stengel, there are cards here, but I'm going to just call the names of the folks you told me that would come, just in no particular order, and then if we go through the cards and just make sure that we had everyone. The first one that was written down here was a firm by the name of Code Red. You hear Code Red? Yes, you're up. And I think you've been asked to do a brief 5-minute presentation. We recognize for all of these, you've devoted, you know, substantial portions of your life to this, and we recognize you go on and on and on, but we've got a number of other matters to get to, so we really are going to limit you to sharp 5-minute presentations. I think we've got 4 or 5 vendors behind you. So please, everybody, let's just do it that way.
Very good.
Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity.
And we're going to set the clock. We're not trying to be rude, but we just want to be fair to everybody.
Good morning. My name is Robert Tuttle. I'm with the Emergency Communications Network. I'm CEO. We have offices, our corporate offices are based in Ormond Beach, Florida, and we also have an office in Century City here in Los Angeles. With 5 minutes, I'm not sure that the best approach this morning is for me to necessarily walk you through our system. I think what you'll find is that the systems are relatively comparable, our system and our competitors, and there are several that provide the bulk of these type of service to cities and communities throughout the country. I think what might be more beneficial is for me to take a moment and explain how they work and really what you will do with the systems and why you should have a system. And I think that, Councilman Weiss, you've done a lot of that work in the preamble here this morning. We're finding here in Southern California that many cities are looking to rely upon the county for this capability. And I would argue with you and make the case this morning that I think that's a mistake. An analogy would be that you would decide not to have a home phone because your neighbor has one, and if you have an emergency, you can go and use the neighbor's phone. And you'll use it that often. In other words, if your focus in looking at a mass notification system is on mass emergencies, then you're probably okay to rely upon the county system. But I think a better description would be a community notification system. And that's how our city clients use this technology. They use it for a myriad of applications besides FEMA-level emergencies. Of course, the fires, earthquakes are often the jumping off point to get discussion going about devoting revenue and energy and time into putting a system like this in place. But once the system is in place, what we have found in analyzing our clients' use is that the vast majority of these uses never rise to that description. For example, contacting the community to let them know about a boiled water notice or an escaped convict in their area, a missing child. Using it for internal communications. The city staff has got to be the size of many actual number of residents of some smaller cities. I mean, you've got a massive city staff internally. These systems can be used to very rapidly and easily communicate with your team, with internal staff for the city. You can do a weekly address on the state of the city. You could have a breaking event where you need to let your department heads know what the city's position is on that issue, how to reply to the press, even to let them know that something has occurred, so that when the press comes and asks them about it, they have an answer, that they're made aware. These systems are very, very high speed. They're easy to use. They integrate telephonic landlines, cell phones, text messaging, email broadcasts into easy-to-use user interfaces. And once you have this system in place, you will find thousands of utilizations for it, besides the handful that initiate this discussion. We have again, rather than show you and walk through the system, which we really can't do effectively in 5 minutes, and other than to say that the systems are easy to use, they're easy to access from virtually anywhere, and they don't require dedicated hardware in order to utilize them. What I'd like to do is play for you, as an example, a message that was launched by one of our clients to the community to talk about an issue that I think is more typical of the way that these systems will be used beyond the fires and emergency notification. Kyle, if you could.
Good morning. This is Mayor Lois Reynolds, an important traffic alert. The Florida Department of Transportation will be closing all lanes of the middle bridge that connects Okeechobee Boulevard to Palm Beach at 6 p.m. Monday, November 22nd, till 6 a.m. Wednesday, November 24th. All of the bridges in Palm Beach will be fully functional. State officials have promised that by Thanksgiving Day, all 4 lanes of the north and middle bridges should be operating. This should allow us to get traffic back to near normal. Please know that I share your aggravation and frustration with this road construction. These are State Department of Transportation projects that the city of West Palm Beach has no control over. However, I assure you,
Keep going.
that aggressively lobbying the state to speed these projects up that have been delayed due to our technology. I want to thank you for your patience and wish you and your family a blessed Thanksgiving. If you have any questions, please call City Hall on Monday
So who got that message and how was it delivered?
You can stop it then. Thank you.
I mean, just in terms of just basics of how what is your project? Your product, how does that work?
The system allows you to, thank you. The system allows you to go into a website, to look with a map at the city, and to go in and actually select geographically, if you wish, the areas that you want to target the call to. So if there's a communication that only affects residents in a particular area, you can select them. You can go from a point with a radius, similar to most other mapping technology. Once the area is selected, you record your message, hit a button, and the system launches that message in real time. Now, additionally, you can set up scenarios where you can have a predefined area. For example, if Savage River Dam is a client of ours, and they set up scenarios where if the dam were to break, what would we have to do? And they know within 15 minutes, certain low-level lying areas will be underwater. They've set that project up as an evacuation project. All they have to do is hit a button, and it launches that call.
I don't want to unduly cut you off, but we've got a number of other presenters. Is there any other sort of highlight that you want to leave us with?
Only to let you know that among the main companies, the technologies are similar to the extent that the speed of notification is going to be tremendous. You'll have hundreds of thousands, even potentially millions of calls an hour that could be made if the infrastructure can handle it, and that's part of the ongoing testing. So the mass notification side of this is pretty much standardized at this point. Your infrastructure is very good here telephonically in Los Angeles and the city and the county. So this will not create an undue impediment to communications when you launch. This is something you should have. It seems clear that you know it, but I think my point I'd like to leave you with really is that you should have your own system under your own control. That type of message is not a message that you're going to be leaving with a shared county system. That's a system you'll leave with your own system that you've purchased and
Thank you.
control.
Thank you.
Two questions.
Okay.
Does it only go to landline, or will it go to cell phones in that area?
Cell phones also.
Both.
It's based upon the address where the cell phone resides. In other words, it's not going from a cell tower and trying to identify where they are. So, for instance, if there were an issue that affected your home and your cell phone was in our system and we needed to let you know now that don't drink the water at your house, you'd get the call here on your cell phone now.
And what about on the internet? Is there any access on the internet on that notification?
In what
Any way to make notification?
email, text messaging.
Is that capable with this system?
Yes, it's all integrated.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we're going to hear from the next.
Let me just ask, in your literature where you mentioned opt-in, what does that mean?
There's a certain amount of data that's publicly available that we start with. We can also add 911 database information. But your cell phone may not be available to us. So we provide a web-based ability for the public to go and enter their information into the system in addition to what we have to start with, whatever publicly available information there is. That can be added to our calling lists.
Okay, so the thing is, you have a base of numbers that you can draw from, and is this opt-in an additional cost to the person or to the agency?
No, sir.
Thank you.
And if you have 4 million people, how long would it take to notify 4 million numbers?
Well, if you have 4 million people, you probably won't have 4 million numbers.
Say you have 4 million numbers, business, residential, et cetera. You got a bulk of 4 million. How long would it take to notify that?
Boy, it's an interesting
Okay,
question.
How about a million?
Probably an hour.
An hour you can make that type of notification?
Yes.
And colleagues, we're going to hear from the other vendors. I don't want to, if there are questions like this, maybe we'll ask them all at the same time, just so that one doesn't.
Sure.
Have-
I think that
have-
those answers are going to be pretty much synonymous among the company.
Okay.
Have a seat and stick around, please. Christopher Visaki from Cooper Notification. And if you have anyone else who works with you, feel free to bring them up.
I'm here by myself. Is there a microphone I can use
I think
over
you
here?
can, Mr. White, can't he bring that over there?
Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name's Chris Pasakian with Cooper Notification. Yeah, this is the Roam Secure. Cooper Notification really has taken a three-tiered approach, or a three-layered approach. These are the three critical areas that we see in mass notification. Indoor, because not everyone is going to have pagers and cell phones readily available to them. Outdoor, because once you get people out of a building, you want to also be able to direct them. Here you'll see our mobile TAC waves. That is a portable unit that can be placed in wherever you may need it, say for a fire emergency. Because it's mentioned before, not all people have the phones and the home lines, the landlines. So these are addition. Kind of what we're talking about here today is the personal alerting, the text messaging, the cell phones. So this is our layered scenario. Threat through our emergency operations center, control station. We go through the internet, cell phones, indoor mass notification. Our indoor mass notification typically ties onto the fire alarm systems. So, for example, in a building like this, what we would do is take over the notification portion, the speakers and that you see on the wall. And so the rest of the infrastructure would stay in place. We would add on to that, so it would be an enhancement. Key here is optimization. Something that we have that's different is that we're whitelisted with all the major phone companies. So most of the other companies, I believe all of them, have to go through what's known as an aggregator. And these would be a company that would handle a large volume of calls, kind of like American Idol, the dial-up calls, when you call in to, place your vote. So we are whitelisted. So that means that when our messages get pushed out, they go directly to the carrier and are pushed out to the people that need. As you can see, emails, pagers, cell phones, Blackberries, voice, desktop, XM satellite radio. System is based on there's really two systems in one. There's our Roam Secure Alert Network. That is a standalone system. Once you have two in an area, whether it's the city or our campus at USC, once those systems are in, you have interoperability through R6. That's the information exchange. So if USC wanted to monitor what's going on here, and you guys can partner together and allow them access, go on with the R6 product, and they can filter what they want to send out to their campus. For example, if there was emergency closures in the area around the campus, they may want to know that. Interoperability. Highly reliable, speed of delivery, 50,000 people per minute, 3 million per hour. Proven scalability, so you can scale it. For example, you may want one system that just handles your city infrastructure and another system that handles your public sector. That would be the RSAN R6 operability. How it works, authorized senders. You don't necessarily have to be sitting at an emergency operation center. If you are an authorized user, emergency operation manager, you can dial in with your cell phone, BlackBerry, and get messages pushed out. As you can see, again, I believe that we are the only system that's connected into the major wireless carriers, so you don't get spam filtered. There's some of the emergency operation protocol that we're set up on. And I guess the key takeaway here is that
the R6 and RSAN interoperability between the two. Some of the regions. Again, just want you to see that we have the Emergency Operations Center in mind with our first responders. GS mapping, I think everyone's pretty much going to have that. Key to that is people are going to need to log in and be able to register themselves. And I urge you to go on to USC's. It's called trojansalert.usc.edu, and you can see how you can log in and register yourself. I'll go ahead and close here. Are there any questions for me?
The client list up there, what does that mean that, say, the Philadelphia region is your client, or San Francisco? What does that mean? Who's your actual client?
The city.
Okay.
Does it work with the fire department, the police department, emergency operations, and the jurisdictions you have? Who does it work through? The mayor's office? What entity?
Well, in each case is a little different. Through the city offices, it's typically the city that sets it up through their emergency operations center. Typically, we do the information exchange and set the police department, fire department up with their system as well, so that they all can talk back and forth.
Is it a lease system or is it a purchase system?
It is a purchase system with annual maintenance fees on just the room secure portion of it.
Mr. Parks, any questions for this? Well, thank you for that overview, and please stick around as we cycle through other folks.
The last takeaway is that we are the only system approved through the Department of Homeland Security as Anti-Terrorism Safety Act approved, which limits the city's liability if you deploy the system. So thank you very much.
Okay, our next presenters, Randy Bozeman, and if you've got helpers, feel free to bring them forward. Okay.
I'll just forego
and tell us the name of your company
PowerPoint
as well. So
yes, I am Randy Bozeman with Dialogic Communications Reverse 911. Would like to say, though, that in partnership with us, feel free to use the name Reverse 911. We're the owners of that name. You can use it as much as you like. And that's important because the public does understand what that means. It's very powerful. We are a organization, a very diverse organization, and I'm going to tell you three things here that I hope you can take away from. One is who we are, what we do, and finally, why I think and why our organization thinks and believes that we could best provide a notification solution for the city that is not only effective, powerful, but also economical. And in today's world, in today's environment, it's kind of important. I'm sure that we're all aware of the things that are going on. Plant CML is our owners. They are a local company here in this area. They're also the providers of the 911 call taking for the city of LA, the police department. Plant CML is owned by EADS North America. And I tell you these things about the ownership because what I want you to take away from that is that our business, from the very top down to the very bottom, is providing critical, mission-critical notification technologies, equipment, solutions to the first responders, state and local government, military, DOD personnel. We get what you're trying to do. We get the importance of that. We've gotten that for the past collectively 70 years. That's the collective power that we bring to the table. 80% of the top 50 cities in this country use our solutions for mass notifications, for internal notifications, such as the LA Fire Department here to notify first responders, public health officials, 80%. And not only have they been doing that in many cases over the past decade, we've got many of them who have made an investment with us and then continue to make the investment over the years. What do? We provide mass notification, critical notification to communities all across America. And I think I don't have to go into a lot of reasons why you'd want to do that. I remember years ago when I first got into this, 13 years ago, when I heard that one of the cities that used our technology used it to find a missing child. And then a few months later, an Alzheimer's patient walked away from an assisted living facility, and they used the technology to call the residents to help them find that individual. It's a powerful tool. It's very powerful for very targeted notifications, for things such as public service announcements, road construction, road closures, to worst-case scenarios such as you have to evacuate due to fires or a hazmat situation, or down in Florida where they have to do hurricanes. What we bring to the table is the ability to provide a complete solution set to the city. Whether you want to have a leased system, whether you want to own the technology, whether you want a combination of both, whether you want a comprehensive notification solution for everybody in the city just to call the public, or whether you want a combination of calling the public or calling your internal individuals. We provide that. We're the only solution provider that does that. I'd also like to tell you that our commitment to you is this. We don't consider ourselves a vendor. Our commitment to you is we work with our customers, we work with our clients to understand what you're trying to accomplish.
Hey, so your time's running out. Did you want to just tell us a moment about how your machine works?
It's not a machine.
Okay.
We have a complete set of solutions and notification technologies that we can provide to you. We want to work with you to determine what you're trying to accomplish, and then we'll come back with a business fit and a business solution, the best way for you to accomplish that. This is not a machine. It's not technology. We have technology that drives it.
Joke. Your time's running out, and I just don't have the first clue about what it is you guys do. So if you want to tell us
We provide mass notification technologies, whether you're notifying individuals by phone, text messaging, SMS messaging. We have the ability to do internal notifications and hit all devices, to get responses back, to have registration portals where citizens can register, because that's the great secret to the system is you've got to have accurate and precise data.
Who do you have in this region, Southern California?
LA Fire Department, Seattle, San Diego, the state of California, military bases up and down the coast.
LA City Fire Department has this in place.
Yes.
Well, you don't have give you a chance. I mean, get the ability to click on a computer and map out a whole region and push a button and send out 1 million messages in an hour? You have
no. Say that one more time. Click on the computer, push out notifications? Absolutely. Can you do 1 million notifications in an hour? No.
Okay. All right. Any questions for them? All right, well, thank you for the presentation, sir. Do you have anything at all? Handouts? DVDs? Lapel pin? Okay. All right. Bentley Collier, 21st Century Communications.
Good morning. I'd like to first thank Councilman Weiss and his assistant Sue Stingle, who invited us here. Appreciate it very much. Also like to thank Emery Sauer, who's been working very closely with our team, Eric Sutliff, in coordination of efforts that were already ongoing with the county here in Los Angeles. 21st Century Communications is a company that's been around for about 20 years. 2009 will be our 20-year celebration. We've been involved in providing mass communication, critical communication on a large scale throughout that time. We've been a long, successful provider of these type of solutions, originally providing those solutions to the utility industry and mass notifications when there are large outages, providing people with that information when their electricity will be back on, and that has rolled over in the past 10 years to include the mass notification system for the public safety perspective. One of the things that you talked about early on was that the city is from a timing perspective, has talked about this for a year or so. I guess from a solving your problem, 21st Century Communication has been the provider chosen by the county recently in LA County. We're in the midst of completing that transaction and working to bring that live. And one of my previous providers up here has said that they should not be intermingled between a county and a city. And I would argue that's a little short-sighted, because if you don't coordinate your efforts in a city and county this large, I think you're going to get some duplication of databases, duplication of messages, and so on. And so from that perspective, I think it's very important that those efforts be coordinated in a city this large and a county this large. From the perspective of timing perspective, 21st Century Communications has also finished contracting and has nearly completed implementation for the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power use of the system. So there's contracting vehicle in place with 21st Century Communications so that the county or the city can quickly come on with the 21st Century Communications system, not needing long-term contract negotiations because those that exist. I want to make sure that you do get a feel for our system as well. Like many of my competitors, it is a hosted, web-based solution that allows someone who wants to launch a message to go to a web page. They have a secure sign-on. They can designate either speech, text-to-speech, where they can type a message. The message will go out as they deem. It can be geocoded from drawing on a map to show where you want the message to go. It can be loaded to a specific database of phone numbers you want to go. It goes to landlines, cell phones, text message, email, fax, which is kind of an old technology, but it can still do it over fax as well. From the standpoint of ease of use, it's been highly renowned from many of our users. The County of San Diego did use the 21st Century Communication to launch the evacuation. The county and 16 cities or departments within the county make use of the system there as well. Big Sur, while there were the fires were actually going on there last fall, came to us and asked us how quickly we could get the system up for them, that they were under dire need to have a communication system. We were able to do that within a 72-hour period, bringing in the solution as well. So I would just share with the council that 21st Century Communications knowledge of California and notification systems within California is long-term. We're a provider to SMUD and the utility department from San Diego utilities as well. So our relationships with many of the counties, the cities, the utilities in this area is long-term. And I would also say that because we have contracts in place, if it's an issue, as you said when we started this meeting, that you're looking on this being a year old, I think we could quickly solve that issue for you because of the contracts that are in place with the Department of Water and Power. I'll leave a few seconds for questions.
Mr. Zine, Mr. Parks, questions? Mr. Zine?
You have a contract now with Water and Power?
Yes, we do.
Did that go through our information technology, or was it a separate contract directly with Water and Power?
It was Water and Power, and IT was heavily involved, but it was with Water and Power as well.
The city's IT?
Correct, yes.
And then one of your competitors has a contract with the LA Fire Department?
I cannot speak to my competitors, but I do not with the fire. I have the county. I have the.
You have the LA County?
County, and they plan on having I believe, the sheriff's department as the main single point of contact for the system, and how they're going to work with the cities within the county. We usually work closely with them, but they're at this point they own the solution, and would be incumbent upon them to work with you if you wanted to, let's say, piggyback on that particular solution.
So we have small cities around here, Beverly Hills, Glendora, Glendale, Burbank. Do we have any of those cities, or is it planned to link those all with the county?
That at this point, that is the county's choice as to how they want to work with those individual cities. We're working closely with the CIO's office there and I believe the Department of Safety office as to how they want to coordinate those efforts. A big undertaking that this has to have to work correctly is that public sign-up page that some of my competitors have talked about. You have to coordinate. Many users today do not have a landline in their home. They rely on a cell phone. Right. So if the coordinated effort is not taking place to have your constituents go out and sign up and put their cell phones in the database, then you're going to miss a large number of callers. So coordinating that effort with the county in conjunction with the cities would make sure that you don't have people saying, hey, go up and sign up for this page for the county and this page for the city. And again, I can't speak to how you want to work with the county, but the opportunity is there to work together.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that
Thank you very much.
presentation.
Appreciate it.
Final presentation will be Robin Richards.
Thank you.
My name is Robin Richards. I'm with Blackboard Connect. We are located here in Los Angeles and have been located, our headquarters here in Los Angeles for 8 years. We're a public company with $750 million of market cap. And that's important because this is important business, the notifications of our citizens. They need to trust that you've chosen companies that can do it, have done it, and will do it next time because they have the resource, the capability, and most important, the experience to do this. We have over 24,000 active sites in 48 states in this country, plus the District of Columbia. We do over 260 million time-sensitive calls have been sent in the 2008 alone, 29 million text messages via email and SMS. Our system was just used recently in Yorba Linda. No hardware is required, no software is required, no phone lines are required, and other than your city telephone numbers of your employees, no databases are required. This is a one-stop shop. We provide it all. I believe the councilman said at the beginning of this, we do not want to be without an emergency notification, a city the size and the greatness of Los Angeles, come the next fire. That fire might be next week, it might be next month, it might be 2 hours from now. With us, you will be up and running and no training necessary other than 15 or 20 minutes within 10 days. Data loaded, ready to go. Whether it be the police department that you give, this is your product right here, this is your product, okay? Whether it be the police department, whether it be the fire department that you designate, whether it be each and every one of you in your various districts, or whether the mayor makes a citywide call. We can target all of it down to one individual, and we maintain that database for you. Okay? Trusted nationwide, the state of Mississippi. You hear an awful lot of people say, I have this, I have that, I have this. When we say we have it, that means the chief executive of that particular, is it the Los Angeles Unified School District? Then the superintendent can send that message to 100% of the people and has. If we say it's the state of Mississippi, Governor Haley Barbour has picked up that phone and sent the message to 100% of the residents and the businesses and the state employees of the state of Mississippi, and he has. So it's not little pieces in and out. It's the chief executive officer of that entity and their ability to send that call, or their designees to send that call. To give you a couple quick ones, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Orange County, California, Georgia Tech, Yale University, Princeton University, Palo Alto, who probably did more vetting of vendors than I've ever seen in my life, Stanford University, all have chosen us. Okay? When you send 250 million calls plus a year, you better be good at it. Los Angeles Unified School District, that is one of our customers, and we have sent 800,000 calls in an hour and 10 minutes in the last 3 months for the city of Los Angeles on behalf of the superintendent of the Los Angeles school districts. I know all you want to know is can we do it? You're going to vet long-term for this. Bing over here, why don't we show them how we do it?
Yeah,
Bing,
absolutely.
make
We're
a
running
call.
out of time here, Robin. We've got 1:33 seconds left. I know emergencies happen anytime, and you need a system that's simple to use, and that's what we have here. I've got a scenario programming just to make it quick over here. It walks you through the process. 1, 2, 3. Number 1, select your message. Number 2, select the people you want to send this message to. And I've got the emergency management team here preloaded into their account so that you don't have to go figure out what the numbers are. Simply pick from everybody here. And if you have everybody in the system already, the next thing you can do is proceed to select them by map if you want to, or by any other specific groups. So let me pick them. We've got the mapping interface here just to show you how that looks like too. So you can geo-target as well. So let me move on to the next step.
Emergencies aren't convenient, and we are pretending as if there was one while we were right here and making a
Schedule
call
now?
live on our system.
And pretty much confirm the call. Now, in this case, I'm going to send via voice, email, text messages, any other devices that you're preloaded into the system. So it's been scheduled, and you simply log off if you have to, go about your business, and then wait for your message to come through. Now, I've got mine on silent mode here, but let me just pick up my message here.
That's our system.
Answer, hello.
This is Bing. I'm over here at City Hall.
It's my system coming through. Hello.
Bing. I'm over here at City Hall. This is only a test. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Please press star to listen to the message
800,000 people in the city of Los Angeles. We've done it over and over and tested it over and over. This isn't potential. This is actually have done it. And we just showed you how quick.
So how do you know in a system like that, how do you decide who's going to receive the message? Do you do this mapping thing, or is it all people whose numbers you already have in a system? How do you know how do you decide who you can push it to?
Councilman Weiss, if you were the person that was designated to make that call, you could have unlimited number of fields. Your emergency staff only would have 20 numbers in it, or however many you have. Everybody in your particular district, you could have every home and cell phone number, okay, that they would allow you to call. Could be the citywide. It could be to 5 people on your staff. You choose either from a preset database, or if you don't know the database and you say the fire broke out in Topanga Canyon and we want each and every home in Topanga Canyon, you draw a circle or use a polygon and really quick, we did this in 1 minute and 30 seconds, you could do the same thing, and it would take all the database that we have, upload it quickly, and deliver that message to all the households and businesses within the region you've designated.
So, I mean, we saw one of the computers earlier did something like that. Same concept?
Mapping concept would be the same. The Yahoo Maps is, or Google Maps is what you use. Okay, that's pretty much what most people use because you're familiar with it. We don't need training. The question is, do you have the experience to route and throttle millions of calls? And in this case, the city has a million households. Can you route and throttle 1 million calls without impacting the local infrastructure? Have you done it? I dare to say nobody in here has done that but us in the city of Los Angeles, okay? And I didn't even hear who's here. I guarantee that. We can prove it, okay? And we've done it a bunch of times.
Mr. Parks?
I was wondering, is this our last presentation?
Yes.
If we can get everybody up at one time and then... 'cause
All the presenters?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because then we can...
All the presenters, if you could please come up. And then, Mr. Parks, we're going to have this, I know June's been working on this, we're going to have the city staff as well, but you want just the
because I just have some
private-
questions that I can ask each one, and they can all...
No problem.
Yeah. Why don't you get some seats? And I just have a series of questions that if each company can answer them, as far as your presentation, are these prototypes, or they're actually functioning systems?
And if you could do me a favor, just speak into the mic and announce your company, because you remember it, but we may not. Okay.
Bentley Collier, 21st Century Communications. It is an actual system. It's been in place for over 20 years. For 20 years, actually.
Rob Tuttle with Emergency Communications Network, Code Red. Our system's been working and in place for over a decade.
Randy Bozeman, Plant CML, ENS, DCC Reverse 911 notification solutions have been in place for well over 20 years.
Is that your code, is that your company name, Reverse 911, or is that just a universal term?
That is our trademark name for that technology.
Okay, so Reverse 911 is your company? Okay.
Robin Richards, Blackboard Connect, up, running, 8 years.
Chris Visagi, Cooper Notification, Roam Secure, and up and running for the last 8 years. Proven technology. We are the only system that is Department of Defense approved for indoor, outdoor, and personal alerting.
Okay. And then on the, let me ask, do all of your companies have a public feature and an employee feature? We started.
21st Century, yes, you absolutely have the choice to do a public outreach call as well as individual employee database calls. So yes.
ECN Code Red, yes.
Plant CML, absolutely.
Yes for notification.
Yeah, absolutely, Cooper Notification.
Okay, let me just ask, how does your system connect or work within existing city system for phones and also the emergency radio system and our future interoperability? Do you have just kind of a thumbnail on how you would connect or work within those systems?
21st Century uses a vast infrastructure to actually launch the calls. From the standpoint of working with your public or telephony infrastructure in the city, whether it be Verizon, AT&T, or who the LECs are, we work very closely with those providers to make sure that the system is very interoperable. I come from AT&T, have a 10-year background there, and have a good understanding of how our system works with the providers of your infrastructure. Our system does not necessarily interact with your inbound 911 system today, although it does interact with the databases that are used with those 911 systems.
ECN Code Red. The answer is similar to the previous answer that you heard, in that our systems utilize the existing infrastructure of dialing capability that's based in facilities all around the country for launching calls into the market. As far as dealing with your telephonic infrastructure, there's a possibility that there can be areas where our infrastructure is much more robust than the area you're trying to call into, or we could overwhelm those circuits. With feedback from the system, we can identify that. And you may have heard the term from someone else who's speaking about throttling up or down. Our system can be throttled up or down to match the infrastructure so that we don't blow out your phone systems.
Plant CML, I just concur with that. We have also the ability to use your internal existing infrastructure within the city by putting on-premise-based notification solutions spread out throughout the city, taking advantage of the infrastructure you've currently got, taking advantage of the existing technology you've already invested in, as well as bringing in infrastructure from the outside coming in.
Robin Richards, Blackboard Connect. We require no interface at all with the city's telco system. It's not required, it's not needed, and we do not a drain upon it. We deliver all of our calls using multiple long-distance and LEC carriers from outside of the region so that we don't take up two phone lines. For instance, we would send from another state or another electrical grid for an emergency in the city of Los Angeles so that we didn't take the receiving and the sending phone line both. We have contracted capacity. That's very important because anybody can pick up the phone and send it. Do you have contracted, guaranteed capacity? We operate at 2%. okay, of our capacity, which is more than 4 billion right now? And do you have capacity for speed? What is your contracted capacity with the telcos to deliver by contract per hour? We have over 3 million, and that is expensive for us to buy.
Cooper notification. There's really two ways to go about doing this, and one is to have your own call center, which we do. So we can fully host, and we would host through our call center. We are the only whitelisted company that can go direct to the major carriers, do not have to go through an aggregator, so we will not get spammed out. The other way is for us to work with the client for you to host your own, if that is something that you desire. And we will work with you to basically build a call center. But you have to have the proper amount of telco lines coming in and out in order to handle the volume that you need. So we offer both solutions. We can work with you so that you can host your own, or we can host it for you at our call center.
Okay. And then my final question is, give us a description of what your database is and the size of it and how it's updated, or what do you rely on in making these calls?
21st Century Communications, Bentley Collier. 21st Century uses diverse, spread out Oracle database systems in multiple data centers. Therefore, if we were to have a failure in one data center, that exact database is mirrored in a secondary data center. So you don't have the chance that, let's say there is a disaster in the western part of the U.S. and one of our data centers will go out. The other one, which is in the eastern part of the U.S., is still fully functional and can launch your calls. Currently, there is well over, there's probably 40 million records currently housed on those multiple databases, and they are fully functional and live.
Let me ask you to follow up, how often are they updating?
Well, it depends on our clients. It's kind of their choice as to how often they want their databases updated. We can update some clients through their real-time updating for their employees on a daily basis. Most folks from a mapping perspective or 911 or 411 databases will do that either on a monthly or quarterly basis. Again, that's up to the clients themselves to determine how often they want to do that. We're capable of doing it daily. Most do it on a monthly or quarterly basis, other than for employee databases. Many times out of a PeopleSoft system, they can send real time to us out of their HR, new employees that would be contacted.
Rob Tuttle with CodeRad ECN. As I understand it, your question related to the calling database, correct, specifically?
The database that you reference and that you've been making calls for, and how often is it updated? What is the size of it?
We provide our clients with a database which is compiled from the Experian credit file, essentially compiled data. That file has nationwide 114 million records in it. So we start with that. That provides us about 1 million records, I think, for your city. We would combine that, merge and purge it with any additional data you could provide us. If you have ability to access the 911 database, utility and other billing records and other information that you have would be merged with that file. And then we would put the website with the opt-in, and as citizens were to opt in addition to that, they would be merged to that file.
Randy Bozeman, Plant CML. We use all databases. We use the best databases that we can get access to, whether that be the 911 database, a commercially available database, a combination of those databases, or whether it be from registration portals or other databases that you may have existing within the city. We have the ability to integrate with all these different types of databases and put them into one type of database, whether it be for a list-based notification or for a GIS reverse 911 type notification. As far as the frequency of updates, if it's a live feed and if it's being done through a registration portal, it can be same day. The City of Boston does it weekly. Some do it monthly, some do it quarterly. We work with you to find the best database that we can to reach the most of the citizens that you have, and we'll update it as often as you like, or as often as it needs to be updated.
Let me just verify so I understand it.
Go ahead.
Are you saying that you would come and collect all of our material and use it, or are you saying you come with a set of data that you would be bringing as part of the system?
Initially, we would come with a set of data, which could be the 911 database or a commercially available database. And then over time, if you had a registration portal, you would get that information and we would update it and you would build on that database.
Robin Richards, Blackboard Connect. Councilman, there's two databases. One is your city employee databases, which we get off of your human resource system and interface with, and that's a flat file or a download that would take less than a day. Okay. The second database is the businesses and households throughout the city of Los Angeles. We use 210 different aggregated databases coming into a single file that we have. We update that monthly. There's no choices there. We update that monthly. We come to just over 1.1 million records here in Los Angeles for the resident databases. Things like new mover file, change of address file, multiple yellow page file, white page files, all kinds of different databases. We use, as I said, 210. And then what happened in New York City, Mayor Bloomberg went on television and he said, hey, we have a new notification system, did it multiple times over the course of the first week of they're a client of ours, went on television and said, listen, we're going to do an emergency notification test call, okay, on Saturday and Sunday. If you do not receive a call on either Saturday or Sunday at your home phone or your business phone, please go to our website, newyork.org, click on notification, enter your address, and give us the right telephone number. After we did that, we went up about 17 or 18% the next week on available numbers. So it's a very effective way, and
You have the New York City.
we have New York City, yes, sir.
Ask a question, Mr. Parks. Are you?
My final question is to hear from the last.
Chris Pisaki with Cooper Notification. I agree with what my competitor here said, and we operate much the same way. As far as our database, we build a database that is your database. We are not sharing databases between you as our customer and, say, Washington, D.C. as our customer. So the database is your database. So if you set up for your employees, then there would be an employee database, and we would either get that information with you or help you provide information to your employees so that they could log on themselves and enter their own information. And much the same in the public sector, where there would need to be advertising and notification within your district to get people to log in and register their information.
Question I had was for each of you. I don't know. Let's say there were fire in Topanga today, out Mr. Zine's way, and that affects the hillside area that he has in his district. It affects the roads in and out of Ventura County. Affects the 405. It affects sort of the Santa Monica, Malibu area, and you got to click on we saw you guys demonstrate. Could you just blast that out to that radius of the world just now?
Bentley Collier, 21st Century Communications. Yes, absolutely. You can use our system and the mapping technology. If you know the general vicinity and you can draw a circle and basically expand that as far as you think you need to cover the geography you want to call. As soon as you do that, you upload your message, whether it be text-to-speech or verbal message via WAV file, boom, you're gone.
Okay. Who's next?
Rob Tuttle, ECN, Code Red. Because we're started in Florida 11, 12 years ago, a lot of our utilization initially was hurricane. So we have a feature in addition to the mapping, which will allow you to select a specific geography. We have an all-call feature where you can click an icon and launch and essentially select your entire database. So it's because it's frequently used in those scenarios.
Let me just ask, if I understood Mr. Weiss's question, is that can you do that today? Or do you have to go and assemble something to make that happen?
Well, because we manage the entire national database, we already have your file in-house. So yes, we could do it in an hour from now if you needed to do it today.
Hey, you guys?
Yes.
Yeah, but this is what I don't understand is you say you're with the city right now.
LA Fire, yes.
Okay. If you're with the city right now, you can't do it because the city doesn't do it. No, please don't. Because the city doesn't do it because we've just had 500 fires and the city hasn't done anything other than the city knocks on people's doors. So you're not doing it. You can do it, but you're not doing it.
The solution that we have with the city is for internal notifications. We do have the capability of doing that as an organization and delivering that type of solution to the city.
Got it. Okay.
Taking advantage of the existing investment in infrastructure that you've already got.
Okay.
We can do it. We are doing it. We make calls every day in this city, hundreds of thousands of calls every day in this city.
Got it.
No, we would have to build something for you. As far as time it would create to create the Roam Secure system for you, a couple of weeks.
Okay. Oh, well, if you guys could have a seat, we're going to have the city. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Zine.
Question, if we can go down the line, cost, high and low.
I'm sorry?
The cost, high and low. High ball, low ball, and the cost.
There are, I guess, so many methods to buy the solution. I mean,
Are we talking millions? Are we talking multiple millions?
it depends on contract. If you want to have an allowable amount of calls, whether it be, it can be sold on an unlimited basis, on a per call basis, how you structure it. It could be as little as if you want to set a system up for, say, $50,000 and make no calls, there you go. If you want to use the system ongoing on a constant basis, it could be as much as $1 million. Okay.
Rob Tuttle from ECN Code Red. Similarly, depending on how it's structured, anywhere from $250,000 to $2.5 million annually.
Randy Bozeman, Plant CML, I would agree, 250,000 up to 2.5 million.
We price a little bit differently. It's all inclusive. You don't have to guess on your use. You can call 15, 20, 30, 50 million times if required. There's no hardware, there's no software, there's no setup. It'll cost you $500,000 for the next 6 months, as many calls as you want. You'll be calling in 10 days, no questions asked.
So $1 million a year.
$1 million, $500,000 through your next fiscal. Yeah.
We also have many pricing options available. The easiest all-inclusive package would be about $600,000 the initial year to get set up with only a 20% annual reoccurring cost.
Okay, thank you.
I think it's real important to ask, is that unlimited calling, or do you also pay for calls, or do you have to buy a bucket, or, because...
I'm just trying to get a ballpark
Yeah.
figure.
Well, the calls will make a big difference.
That's an unlimited package.
Okay. All right. Let's ask the city staff to come forward. If you guys can hang out for a minute, appreciate it. All the relevant city staff. I know June has been working on this. June, perhaps you want to come forward and tell us who else you have here, whether I see ITA, fire. I apologize if my agency eyesight is bad. LAPD. So June, why don't you tell us who you want with you, if you want anyone.
June Gibson with the CLA. Maybe I'll start with how this project evolved and where we are now. As the chair indicated, there was a motion that was introduced, and the committee had considered this item about a year ago, and the instruction at that time was focused on emergency notification. And the fire department made a presentation with respect to the system that they had in place. We did have a series of meetings with the fire department, and I think, as demonstrated by the vendor today, we realized there were some extreme limitations with respect to the system that the fire department has. Subsequent to that, Councilman Parks introduced a motion. The focus of the motion was eventually moved toward if I can borrow Councilman Weiss's term, an e-government system, and that the intention would not be limited to just emergency notification, but also in terms of how the system could be used for operational purposes, because Councilman Parks realized that there could potentially be efficiencies as a result of implementing such a system. it's because of that particular focus that we have spent a tremendous amount of time learning from other public agencies as to the kinds of systems that they have and how they are used. New York City was one of the agencies that we contacted. With respect to the emergency notification system in New York City, they are doing it on a pilot basis. They have identified 5 boroughs that they consider to be very high risk. They've recently implemented that.
They only
and-
have 5 of them, but okay.
Excuse me?
They've identified 5, I mean, it's,
The 5 high-risk boroughs as part of their pilot
never
program.
mind, okay.
Am I saying that wrong? Do they not have boroughs?
They do, but they have 5.
Oh, they only have 5 boroughs?
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, okay,
All right.
sorry. Yeah, they identified 5 areas within the 5 boroughs.
Okay,
Sorry.
okay.
You're not a New Yorker, that's okay.
Okay, sorry. Okay. I think you can see today that from our perspective, the systems are basically very similar. And the challenge for us has been to identify funding. The ballpark figure that we have received has been a range of anywhere between $500,000 for a trial program to realistically $3 million a year. Given the fact that the committee is considering this item today, for us to report back, it would really be helpful to give us guidance as to how you want the system to be used for the interim period. If the intention is to use this only for emergency purposes, that would be helpful in guiding us in determining how we should move forward. In a very simplistic way, there are sort of 3 ways in which the public can be notified. It could be through a subscription service. It could be through a 411 database, which we would actually be purchasing from the vendors. There would also be a 911 database, which is more expensive because that includes unlisted numbers. And the 911 database could only be used in emergencies as defined by the PUC. So that's sort of where we're at right now.
Kevin Joe from ITA. Other databases that could be used is like DWP we could use as their customer database. There was one vendor who had mentioned, the city's database as far as the personnel and staffing. So there are multiple sources for data that we can feed into this thing.
Let me kind of comment on where I thought we were going from the beginning, is that I think it's a expensive cost if we only are relying on emergencies, because we could pay for and not have an emergency for 6 months, and then as we struggle to re-up, we could have an emergency and not be online. What we were looking at is that even to the minimal expense of using 199 letters, that you could eliminate those off of the cost of the city's mailing and completing letters. You can use them for notifications if we're doing sewer construction. We can use them for street closures. We can use them for parades, and that it would be to our benefit to have the larger usage of them if it could be done, particularly without the city taking on the role of updating databases, and also the city not investing in software or hardware where we were not responsible for the system itself. And so it was a matter of trying to figure out what company could do that. And even though we've gotten a number of presentations today, I certainly can't sit here today and figure out, when people say I'm the only one that does A or B, whether that's so or whether it's meaningful to us that they can or can't do it. So what we would hope is that, and another thing I was wondering about is whether we've touched all the companies in the universe, so that if we have the ability to be assured that all the companies in the universe that do this kind of work we have access to, then it would be my hope that we could get CLA, CAO, ITA, and the operating departments to come forward and to vet these out and say, this is what we think is the best system. These are the parameters of cost. And what I'd hope is that we not end up with a system in DWP, a system in LAWA, a system somewhere else, and then the fire department deals with another system, that we have a system that we then can use and save the cost of the existing operational systems and pull them all into one system that we can benefit from. I would not like to go as we did years ago, that we had to test, 15 geocode systems before we figured out that maybe we should have one, and things like that. So I thought that we would look at how we could save on one end as to existing systems that would collapse into this system, how we would save some of the operational requirements that are currently going on by discontinuing them and using this system as a substitute, particularly if it could be done fairly quickly and without any situation in which we would have to go through any great exercise to use it. I think the benefit, we would get far greater benefit on the day-to-day usage of it. Certainly, we would want to have it available for emergencies, but I think the day-to-day benefit would far surpass in its usage as to what we'd be doing on an emergency, because they come when they come. We just don't know when they're going to be there. And I think also, in looking at some of the systems that I would hope we would look at something with a flat rate as opposed to a by call rate, because from the size of this city, we can go bankrupt by the number of calls that we could make once we encourage people to use the system. So those are the things I'd hope that we could evolve to and come up with. Where are we using portions or part of it? One of the things I think the fire department has done a good job on, I guess we call it reverse 911, is exact. I don't believe we want to go in years coming by buying more phone lines if there's systems outside that give them the ability to get the same benefit of the calls without having to manage the technology. So those are things we thought we could wrap up into by looking at savings, by looking at eliminating services we're currently doing, by adopting a system that someone else was going to maintain, because we know our history in maintaining systems sometimes goes lacking. Over time, we'll allow them to go under before we fix them. So it's a matter of looking at all those pieces. I don't know whether we can get that done today, but I would hope that a committee of the CLA-CAO and our city experts could come back and tell us what is the most viable way to do it, and then let us figure out where the money might come from. Because I would hope that we could maybe convince DWP, if they used it, to pay a portion, LAWA to pay a portion, Harbor to pay a portion, the city pay a portion, but have a city system.
So, Mr. Parks, let's try to, I agree with almost everything you said. I want to distill some specific points out of that, and so that we can give these folks an actual to-do list. So, why don't you go back through the points you were just making, and let's have them write them down, and let's give them an actual task list.
Okay. If we could ask the CLA-CAO in that committee or whatever we put in that motion to come together and to evaluate all of the companies that are in this universe. And if you tell us this is all, then we'll take your word. I don't think we need to go on an RFI, but to identify all the companies in the universe. From that identification, that we vet them to determine how they can best serve the city of LA, from the ability of existing databases versus the city maintaining versus them maintaining, the cost, flat rate versus per call. Also, what services the city could stop doing, such as 199 letters, other types of notifications, in cost savings, to allow these systems to be put in place. The cost savings identified within the city, the cost savings if we eliminated existing systems that are similar to be replaced by a universal system. Also, looking at issues of whether we can get the proprietaries by some percentage of usage that they can take on the cost.
Can I jump in there in terms of the to-do list? You asked a very specific question earlier, and I believe Mr. Parks agrees with me. It's implicit in what he said. One of your questions was emergency only or non-emergency as well? And I think what he's saying is non-emergency as well. Correct, Mr. Parks? And I think another thing that he said is, I think what he's saying is he wants something that works on its own, by itself, off campus, no machines, no tapes, no he wants to outsource this. He wants to outsource this, which is totally smart. You shouldn't want to insource any of this stuff. Am I correct about that?
Right on.
I want to add that if and I apologize, but if someone tells me they're already doing this with the fire department or the DWP, I'm extraordinarily skeptical, because guess what? The city ain't doing any of this. It's not. It's not. And it's going to fail its residents in the next emergency, because, bureaucrats are really confident, oh, we've done this, we've done that. You haven't. So I'm really less interested in hearing about how something can piggyback with some alleged existing capability at one of these departments right now, because you were saying something along those lines, or you were being a better diplomat than I was, because the city isn't doing this right. We want to do this right. So that, the fact that you can piggyback on something that might sort of kind of exist and basically deserves a C- already is not an interesting fact to me. Mr. Parks, what else should we?
And I think we need to make sure that the databases that are being offered are significant and are updated by the company, and also are databases that can be updated in the future, so that there's no reliance on the city. The cost issue, we certainly need to be looking at. Again, I mentioned earlier the flat rate versus the by call. I would think we prefer a flat rate, but also we need to make sure that there's some controls, that we don't get in the middle of this and 2 years later it's so exorbitant that we have to get out of it. So we need to have some cost control in the future to be considered. And I think also we need to be considerate of companies that have existing systems versus prototypes, existing systems that are operational versus we'll build you a system. I think those are things that are very, very important, because, again, I want to be able to look down the road and say I want to leave no doubt, we need to do this. We need to find the money for it. So the issue is we need to find what's the best way to do it and figure out how the city family can help financially support it and not have all these individual systems.
Mr. Parks, can I add one other thing to that, which is that I think both Mr. Parks and I want this soon. I mean, I don't want to go to the recess without having resolved this. Mr. Parks is going to deal with the very difficult issue of how this is paid for, and that is very complicated. But I think he and I both want to know, give us the right system, give us the right recommendation. And we don't want to wait terribly long. I'm interested in a pilot project nonetheless, because I recognize that, as fast as we want it done and as fast as we ask all the city agencies to move, sometimes that's not so fast. So we'd like to see a possibility for a pilot that could get just rocking and rolling. But again, if you disagree with that, Mr. Parks, but I think that's implicit in a lot of what you've said.
Now, I think the pilot is important, but I think the pilot has to be a full range, not just do a pilot waiting for an emergency. And I think that would be a great selling tool for the city during that pilot to bring everybody on board.
And I want to meet again before we go to the December break on these items. And Ms. Stengel notes that we should probably have the city attorney as well participate in your group. I've spoken with the mayor's office about this. The deputy mayor is here. He and I have spoken about this. I'd like you to participate with them as well. I know this is something the mayor cares about. The mayor, more than any of us in this room, is the man who's been on the front lines of each and every one of these fires and of Metrolink. And I'm sure he's the first person to ask all the folks in this room, have you gotten the right notifications out? He really appreciates why this is so important. And so having Deputy Mayor Ali Khan and others participate would be useful. How much time do you want to give him, Mr. Parks?
If we need something updated before we go on recess, can we get some idea of when we'd have a pilot in place or could have in place by that time?
Can we provide a report back in the last meeting of the committee before we go to recess, and we'll
And you tell
provide
us
as much of a...
whether we can have a pilot, when we could have a pilot? We could have all that?
We will provide a comprehensive report to the committee at that time.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you to the folks in the private sector who came. You will have a receptive audience with this city group, and thank you, Deputy Mayor Ali Khan, for being here and for making sure that the mayor is informed of this and participates in this. Okay, so that we'll hold the item here. Ms. Stengel will schedule us for the next time we all meet on this. Next item, please, Mr. White.
Item 3, CAO and CLA joint reports relative to the Los Angeles Regional Interoperable Communication System, LA-RICS, Joint Powers Authority.
Good morning, Patty Huber from the CAO. Before you are a couple of reports that are essentially memorializing the verbal presentation made to the committee several weeks ago on the LA-RICS project and the proposed Joint Powers Authority. At this time, we are recommending that Council conceptually approve the JPA and authorize the mayor to sign on behalf of the city, subject to some amendments to the several provisions in the JPA. We believe these are minor technical clarifying corrections. Just for a little background, in May 2007, Council adopted a report recommending conceptual approval of the city's participation in this project. Before you now is the finalized JPA that was developed by the Regional Interoperable Steering Committee. In providing our recommendation to you, we evaluated the benefits to the city from participating in the project, the cost and timing of this project as compared to what we would need to do with our own radio system, as well as the terms and conditions of the JPA. Those are all detailed in the report. And again, we covered a lot of this several weeks ago.
Hold on for 1 second.
Yes.
Mr. Parks, you and Mr. Zine wanted certain items held.
Yes.
Mr. Zine, I think, alone wanted one item held, which we can now send off because he's not here.
If he asked for 9 and 11 to be discussed.
And what was your item, Mr. Parks?
9 and 10.
Okay, so let's let 11 go to council with the city attorney instruction. Yes. Continue, please. I apologize. I just want to make sure that if someone was here on item 11 that they could go. Apologize if you had to wait a long time. Please, Ms. Huber.
I was just going to say we're here to answer any questions at this point.
Yep. Okay. Item 11, you're free to leave. And the city attorney, Ms. Jackson, will have the ordinance ready by the time we come to council. Is it you? That's you, right? You're going to do that. That's what I thought. Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Deputy Mayor Ali Khan.
Good morning. R.F. Ali Khan, Deputy Mayor, Public Safety and Homeland Security. As we discussed a few weeks ago when we were here, there were two issues that we just wanted to have clarified in the Joint Powers Authority in order to protect the interests of the city and also protect the interests of all the jurisdictions. We've resolved that, working with the CLA, CAO, City Attorney's Office, and my office, and the Fire Department, Police Department, simply protecting the city from making sure that the city would have to consent if there are any levies or fees that are considered by the JPA, or also if there was an exercise of eminent domain, that the affected jurisdiction would have to consent to that. In addition, there's just one clarification about the period in which any of the members could withdraw from the program after the funding plan has been issued. So that was also to protect the city in the event that the city could, any jurisdiction needed to withdraw from the program because of the costs involved. And I understand the City Attorney's Office has spoken to the county. They're agreeable to these changes. And I think the way it's recommended to go forward is that instead of actually changing the full JPA, but doing it by a First Amendment, so the mayor would, upon council's authorization, be able to sign with the First Amendment that would be presented to the other bodies that have either passed it already, and so they could adopt it, as well as those jurisdictions that haven't.
great. That's very impressive. And Mr. Parks, do you have any questions for them on this?
Yeah, I just had a couple. One thing, I didn't, and I understand we're going through a joint powers, but I didn't see any place in the report how we're going to ensure that the security for general services, DWP, Harbor, LAWA, Rec, and how are all of those going to be incorporated in this discussion so that when we're finished, we are interoperable in the city also?
Those bodies are actually involved with the LA RIC Steering Committee. I believe all of those are, and Chief Keene could speak to that specifically, but we are looking at an interoperable system also within the city as well as within the county.
Dennis Keene, LA Fire. All of the general services agencies are included right now, including the park rangers and police and so forth. We're in discussions with DWP right now about them joining also into the system. Most of those folks already operate on a separate system that the city has for public works type agencies. The county has the same type of thing. They have a first responder system and then a public safety system. Provided the capacity is there, we want to move as many people onto this system as possible. If not, we'll have to probably maintain those two separate systems.
Okay. But when will we know? Because I'd hate for us, and they're talking, I mean, like $500 million or so at some point to get all this done, that we end up with something interoperable with the county, but not be able to speak within the city family. So when will we know if there's capacity to ensure that LAWA, Harbor, DWP, which their security resources are growing as significantly as others in the city, including general services? How will we?
Right. Well, the only one that is not included at this time is DWP. LAWA and LAX police officers will be on the system.
So they're on it now?
They will be, yes. I mean, nobody's actually operating on it now. As you know, it's not constructed, but they are participants and will be included and operate on the system when it's constructed.
And then what about Harbor?
The Harbor, yes.
The only one is DWP?
DWP is the only one we have yet to determine what their actual load is on the system. I would imagine it's not that extensive, though.
Okay. I'd ask the Deputy Mayor if we could find some way that we can get them involved in this, because, again, to have all of this effort going and then find out later everybody's on it except one department, and what we can see, there may be one of the departments that's spread out more than any others. To not be a part of the overall communication system seems like it's not in our best interest. The other thing, and maybe technology has passed me by, but the one item in our notes says that we're moving towards a trunk digital technology system. And I know for years, although the fire department went to trunk system a while back, at least for LAPD and the emergency part of their emergency trigger, that was always something that they shied away from because of the at that time the technology didn't service them. And I just have a concern that if we're going to a total system that's trunked, whether it's going to serve everyone and whether the emergency trigger and those who need instant response are going to be cared for.
The Councilman, the emergency trigger channel, and there'll be multiple of those channels or frequencies because it's regional. None of those will be trunked, just for that reason. Primarily the voice communications, most all of them will be trunked, but there will be a significant number that won't be for, if you will, direct communications or simplex communications. But the emergency trigger frequencies will be identified and specific to those with no other trunking or anything involved in those channels.
Thank you.
And if I could just make one point, and one of the many benefits of this system is that we will have increased capacity for the city in terms of the spectrum that's available. For right now, we're actually running out of spectrum for new stations and for new communication channels. So.
I think we all agree this. The beauty of it is we'll share spectrum, which is not available. The issue is whether we make sure everybody's on it, so we're finished. We have a system that's working in the city as well as the county, but also that we're not ignoring that emergency feature as it relates to the limitations on the technology.
Correct. Tim Riley from LAPD, that's correct, sir. And that'll be part of the RFP process as well, as we'll ensure that whatever proposal is ultimately accepted, that will be maintained for the safety reasons.
Thank you.
Okay, we will approve the report that's been brought forward. Is the latter report, is that correct, Ms. Huber?
Yes, we want to adopt the recommendations from the supplemental report.
We'll do that, and the two of us will send that on to the council. Thank you very much for your efforts in this.
Thank you.
Mr. White, next item, please.
Item 4, Board of Fire Commissioners and CA reports.
Was there a comment? Did you want to be on comment on this? That's what I thought. I said you'd come forward. But well, I'm going to read it. So
Relative to amending Los Angeles Municipal Code, Section 57.3319, emergency planning and evacuation requirements for high-rise buildings and implementing high-rise building evacuation fees.
thought that's what you were here on. Take it away.
Okay, good morning. What we have in front of you today, I'm Fire Chief Kerbrat from the Fire Department. And this is
Martha Cox-Nittickman, representing the Building Owners and Managers Association.
I'm Mark Davis for the CAO. Good morning. What we have in front of you today is a proposal to improve our current high-rise evacuation plan or procedures through ordinance. As you know, the council had made recommendations well early on that the department review their current evacuation procedures. At the same time, we lost our evacuation or our community folks that trained our folks on how to do that. So we looked at this proposal, and through support from Councilman Weiss's office and his deputies and BOMA, Martha, we have in front of you a proposal that while our current proposal does require submission of emergency plans, procedures, and evacuation, this one puts a little bit of accountability into it and requires tracking and the training and actual weighs the effectiveness of this of the current high-rise procedures. The proposal is intended essentially to make sure that when you are in a high-rise building, you know where you're supposed to be, and what your mission is to getting out of the building, and how you're supposed to pass that information on to our first responders. Essentially, we're going to target all our buildings, the biggest 236 buildings. There's 250,000 square feet or more. Those are the ones that they've targeted here. And what it will require is that every high-rise building actually has a floor warden that is certified for their building, that really knows the procedures. Right now, they have a book in their desk. They reportedly know what to do, but when you ask the questions, they don't really know what to do. So this will require training and certification of these people. Every high-rise building floor will also have a floor warden. That floor warden will also have to be certified, and he will be familiar with the procedures as well. And they'll be trained and tracked by an oversight person from our fire department. Because we don't have the staffing actually to train these people, we have certified high-rise service consultants that we have about 20 of those that be required to have to provide this training, and also to verify that the training's on board with these folks. Most of this training we suspect will happen through an online type of training that can be easily handled through our busy type people that we have in our high-rise buildings. The documentation and the tracking will require that type of training to take place. What we've done in the high-rise unit is we've not added a high-rise inspector. We've taken a high-rise inspector that currently exists and given the responsibility for the oversight of this. And the fees that are associated to pay for his salaries are broken down in this document in front of you. Essentially, for every fire safety director, every high-rise building will be $305. Every floor warden will be $24. And an additional portion of this requires that every building that's 35 stories or more, every 3 years, does a complete and full evacuation of the building because of its size. We know that there's going to be, anytime there's a new program, that there's going to be some gaps, and we expect that there's some learning curves. And we're reporting also that we will report back in 1 year and determine if we have enough folks to make this happen, and what are the pluses and minuses, and make sure that it's occurring as we're proposing. And again, I'd like to thank BOMA for their support and Councilman Weiss's office for their support.
Thank you, Martha. I really appreciate everything BOEM has done in this regard, and you've been involved in this for a very long
Yeah.
time. We thought it was very important to work with all of you to find a way to do this that meets the needs of the fire service and
Absolutely.
building owners, and we appreciate that you're here and you have the floor.
Actually, I just wanted to highlight 3 things for you, the reasons why we think it's a great ordinance, and we're very much in support. And we want to thank you, Councilmember Weiss, because you started the whole ball rolling and really did get everyone together. First of all, the enhanced communication. Over the last couple of years, I've been working with Chief Kerbrad, and really what we see is more of a partnership rather than regulation, rather than the fire department coming in and saying, this is how you're going to do it. We've started to have a much better dialogue, and I think from the time that they certify the consultants, then they'll oversee the plans, then we'll start the training. All of that is going to be much more collaborative, and I think that's a great outcome. Second, tenants more involved. Having the floor wardens be trained. You know, the building owners and the management companies have a lot of responsibility, but it's a joint responsibility with the tenant companies and the tenant employees. And so we're pleased. Chief Kerbat, just reviewed how that's going to work, and that links into the third component, which is technology. Their software, online software available, so now the tenants can be trained, and they can do it at their desk, and they'll know a lot more than if they have video that they don't go down and see or whatever. So I think there's flexibility in the ordinance and allows us to do a lot of the things, and it'll be done much more effectively.
Thank you. Mr. Parks?
This may be too mechanical, but I was just wondering if we start this ordinance at a certain date, if without any kind of orderly process, it looks like you could get overwhelmed if everybody just kind of jumps in and says, I want to do my 3rd year evacuation in June. How do we spread that out through the...
Again, that's why we've selected one person. That's all he's responsible for. There's meetings that we're meeting with the people and doing that. We're not going to do all of them on one day. We're going to actually write notices, send them, give them time frames when they can, and we're going to do target teams. We're targeting 20 buildings initially, eventually up through 236. But we need the teeth in the code now to say that this is the process that we're going forward, because we know what you're saying, Councilman Parks, is that it's ridiculous to say this is all going to happen at one time.
Yeah.
We have done full evacuations in some of our buildings. We're familiar with what they are. We've written incident action plans and how we're going to do about that, how we make that happen, and we're going to adopt that previous success that you probably are all familiar with and how we've done that in the past and evacuated City Hall, for example. So, yeah, it'll be done incrementally, and it's what I call herding cats. We're not going to pick up the first cat and beat them up. We're going to make sure that we're getting them all going in the same direction, and then eventually we hope to weigh and measure our success at the end of the year to see if that was an effective plan.
Can I just add something to that? We did have Chief Kerbrat and several others come and speak in front of about 200 building owners and managers. I think it was in the summertime, like June or July. So there's a lot of education. There are going to be fees. They know what's coming. So as a matter of fact, we're getting a lot of inquiries. So we'll continue to help with the education process as it goes along.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll send this on to the council. And Ms. Jackson, this is you again, right? If you could have the ordinance ready for council, that would be terrific. Thank you all very much. Really appreciate how hard you all have worked on it, and my staff and I thank you all very much.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. White, what else you got?
Item 9. The Board of Police Commissioners and CEO reports relative to an application for an authorization to accept a grant in the amount of $260,960 for the Next Generation Click It or Ticket program from the University of California, Berkeley Traffic Safety Center.
Matt Crawford from the Office of the CAO. The item before you is the Click It or Ticket grant. It's my understanding that Councilman Parks has some questions.
Yeah, why don't we just let's go straight to the bonus round. You're up.
Okay. Let me just ask, and just as this a financial issue, and I know we've gotten this grant over a period of time, but we really like to see if in the future years, if we're able to include in the grant the cost for going to court so that there is no impact on the general fund.
The department should be able to keep track of the amount of overtime spent on this.
Just so that we can make it a self-sufficient grant as opposed to they pay a portion and then the city's absorbing some of it. And I think the same comment on item 8 that deals with the other grant, that we find a way in the future to push those into where the grant's
We'll take that into
self-sustaining.
consideration.
Okay.
Anything else?
No, that should do it.
Oh, well, we'll approve the item. Thank you for, hope you learned a lot about notification technology.
We got it all.
Thank you very much. Thank you, folks. Thanks. Mr. White.
Item 10, Board of Fire Commissioners and CAO reports relative to the 2008 Urban Search and Rescue Task Force Readiness Cooperative Agreement and grant funds for the development and maintenance of a national urban search and rescue response system.
Hello.
I just have one question. Is that the issue that deals with the reimbursements, because of the financial situation, if we can ensure that we get as much of that reimbursement in this fiscal year so that we do not have a cash flow issue as it goes through, because the timing of the grant goes beyond the fiscal year. And so we just asked if we can ensure that as quickly as we can get the reimbursements in, it will be of great benefit to us for next year's budget.
Okay.
With that, we're on. Thank you. Approved, adopted, accepted. Fill in your verb. Mr. White, is that it?
That's it.
Thank you, everybody. With the permit. Wait, what time? Noon?
Yes.
All right, so I can race, I gotta race downstairs. I'll see you downstairs. We're not driving together.
No, I got it.
I'm gonna race.
Sure.
And I'll see you down there.
I'll do it.
More about it.
Okay, sounds great. I'll see you down there.